Welcome to Empowering Rural Communities. Thank you for joining us today, October 29th. It's 9 a.m. in Arizona and 12 p.m. on the East Coast. So we appreciate you joining us today. We would love for you to post a message in the chat box with your name, location, organization or / ecosystem, and your favorite superhero. My name is Kelly Green. I am the Chief Operations Officer at SciTech Institute in Arizona, the statewide ecosystem. We're excited about you joining us today. We're going to talk about rural superpowers. What are they? So be thinking about your communities and what makes you super. So again, the name of our convening is Empowering Rural Communities. So welcome today.
Thanks everybody for being here. Like this is so exciting to see this come to fruition, and really thankful for the TIES and the STEM ecosystems team for approaching us to be part of this. You know, we've gotten involved in a project called Rural Activation Innovation Network, and really just started opening up our eyes to the rural and remote regions throughout Arizona. And as we started talking about, you know, doing a conversation on rural, it's really apparent, you know, we have rural in Arizona, but that doesn't mean we encompass what all rural is. And so it was really critical to broaden that to the ecosystems community. And so we're extraordinarily appreciative of how this came to fruition, especially in the time of pandemic. You know, I think for me, it was really awesome and humbling to see just how amazing our team was to jump in, as well as the ecosystems, to really be a collaborative effort to plan this. And so we have listed ecosystems with Idaho, North Dakota, New Mexico, North County STEM Learning Network, STEM Oregon, San Diego STEM, that have come part of the planning, and I'm extraordinarily appreciative for that. We've had groups that have really put in a lot of assets and resources to make it happen, and very appreciative for TIES and the Global STEM Ecosystems Initiative to really have the foresight to, you know, say we really want to have a STEM ecosystems conversation around rural. And so thank you to TIES for really, you know, enabling us to make that happen. And then in addition, the RAIN team for coming and presenting, and also kind of giving us that push to really look at kind of what is STEM and rural like. And we're going to hear a little bit of the research from one of our, the lead for the research team for the RAIN project. And then for the team at the SciTech Institute, they have become masters of running these online sessions and kind of intricacies of how do you work with Zoom. And so we're really, I'm very grateful to our team for helping to do that.
So just a reminder, this is a 3-part series. We are here today, October 29th. We're going to have session or day 2 will be November 5th. And then we'll have a reconvening in January on the 28th. So the goal is to have you network and, you know, really build kind of working groups around different ideas that you engage in today. So I want to really highlight that sharing information, gathering feedback, and seeking support from one another is important, especially because rural communities are incredible. We wanted to know rural superpowers, what are they? So if you can comment in the chat box, we would love to know what you think your rural community has that an urban community might not. So what's a rural superpower? You can comment in the chat box. As Aldous Hodge asked and answered the question, what is a superhero? They're supposed to represent hope, opportunity, and strength for everybody. In the world we find ourselves in today, Superman says it best. I think a hero is an ordinary individual who finds strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. So Batman and Zeus are another incredible set of superheroes. It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me, from Batman. And a true hero isn't measured by the size of his strength, but the size of his heart. And from working with this planning committee, it's true that all of our rural connections are, you know, working with their heart. So thank you to our planning committee for putting this together. Now, Iron Man is truly my favorite. And he says, heroes are made by the path they choose. not by the powers they are graced with. So please, if you have a favorite quote from your favorite superhero, we would love for you to post those in the chat as well. I want you to know you're going to make a difference. And James Gordon says, a lot of times it won't be huge, it won't be visible even, but it will matter just the same. So thank you so much for joining us for our convening today, and remind yourself that you are going to make a difference. So we will spend time today learning about the RAIN grant and the data gathered from the 4 rural communities engaged in their RICs in Arizona. You can select the topic to participate in on advocacy, broadening engagement, and youth voice. We hope the sessions today encourage participants to learn from one another, and we ask you to share your strategies, interact in the chat box, celebrate and encourage one another while considering goals specific for your community. So as Queen Hippolyta said, in a world of ordinary mortals, you are a Wonder Woman. And please remember that when you decide not to be afraid, you can find friends in super unexpected places. A key thought from Mrs. Marvel. Please welcome again Dr. Jeremy Babinger and Calman Manis to introduce RAIN.
Thank you, Kelly. This is Cal Manis. I'm the project director for the Rural Activation and Innovation Network, which is an NSF-funded research grant looking into STEM ecosystems in rural, remote, and tribal communities. We have 4 sites in Arizona that we're looking at. And Jeremy is our PI. Jeremy?
I think do you want me to give the overview, or I think you give the best overview of the RAIN project, but this is one of those grants which took 5 tries to finally get it. And we're super excited that it really gave us the assets to do research, to do evaluation, and to really provide a huge amount of stimulus to 4 communities in Arizona and rural areas. And so we were very fortunate for Cal to come on board, as he's lived in rural for well over 30 years. And I think throughout the project, he probably has so far driven over 200 and probably now 300,000 miles across the state, jumping between communities. And so in addition to having houses in 2 of the communities, he drives regularly to them. And so they all see him as a local resident to be part of that. And so we're very fortunate. One piece of this is to have a really in-depth look at kind of what does it mean for STEM and rural. What was interesting, even when we wrote the grant, was even defining what rural meant was a challenge. I imagine a lot of you that are in the rural communities writing grants have that challenge, right? And you talk to somebody, for example, in Show Low, and I live in what often is called Maricopa State. We're in the very urban areas. People in the rural areas, like Cal has a house in Concho. Concho would say Show Low is the big city, and Concho is rural. And so we really had to really navigate that and really look at what the identity of that was. And so we brought in this group called COSI out of Ohio, and Gary and his team have been amazing at really not just kind of, they live in Ohio, we have this grant in Arizona, but they have really rolled up their sleeves to be, on the ground, working with the communities, really getting to know them to get to the heart of what they do. And Gary, what the great thing about working with him more is, his background, he's got a PhD, I think, in evaluation itself. And so they have a lot of really sophisticated methods that they brought into the project with social network analysis and really these broader studies to understand what's going on. And so really excited to have Gary here to give a little bit more background on what we've at least learned from rural communities that hopefully can provide some insights of our conversations later today, and hopefully within your local communities moving forward. So thank you, Gary, for being here to talk a little bit about RAIN's research.
Thank you, Cal and Jeremy. Again, my name is Gary Timko, and I'm a research associate with the Center for Research and Evaluation at the Center of Science and Industry in Columbus, Ohio, more familiar or better known as COSI. And I will be presenting an overview of the research that we have conducted so far on the RAIN project. The focus or purpose of the research that we have conducted on the RAIN project has been to explore STEM and rural communities and these communities are located in eastern Arizona based on locally meaningful assets, community identified priorities, and cross-sector coalitions and networks. The communities are located, again, in 4 different regions. One is in the Graham and Greenlee counties. Another one is in the Cochise County. One in called Navapache, which is located in both Navajo and Apache counties, and also a region that is located in the Verde River Valley. So those are the 4 different regions located mostly on the eastern part of Arizona. Our research has been guided by a set of questions over the over 3 phases of the project, and each phase is about 1 year. So in phase 1, we are trying to answer the question of how do people perceive, engage with, and value STEM in rural Arizona, as well as how do people see themselves and their community in relationship to STEM. So real soon I'll be sharing some of those findings. 2 is how our community networks defining STEM in relationship to place. How does this resonate or overlap with how community members more broadly identify with STEM? And then phase 3 is how is the network responding to the current health crisis and what strategies are being used? In what ways do the regional networks use local assets and resources in this new context? And the research that I'll be presenting is, again, an overview primarily of phase 1 and phase 2, because we are still collecting and analyzing data for phase 3. So the research team has used what is considered a mixed methods approach of collecting and analyzing both qualitative and quantitative data. In phase 1, we included focus groups, questionnaire, surveys, interviews, and network data. The interviews were done more in phase 2, but that's kind of some of the approaches that we take. So you can see what we did in phase 1, again, focus groups, community survey, RIC interviews, which stands for, again, regional innovative, I think, committees or councils. I've seen it used both ways. Phase 2, we used a community questionnaire survey, and we also did interviews with RICs, and we began taking a look at network data within those. And then 3, we're still working on a RIC survey, interviews, and network data for that. This slide presents the findings from the phase 1 community questionnaire survey specific to individuals' STEM identity. So again, that was a questionnaire that went out to, I think we got 1,004 responses. The scales on right here are factors from clusters of items within the questionnaire that resulted in data to these specific areas. So again, we took a look at STEM identity, STEM confidence, valuing of STEM, and curiosity and love of new ideas. And these were kind of higher clusters or factors that we got from the data that we collected. The average on items that were about people's individual relationship to STEM represent as STEM identity and STEM confidence were only moderate. So these right here, STEM identity and STEM confidence, these are only moderate. And these are averages on a scale that people responded from 1 to 7. So these fall kind of almost right in the middle. But the average on items regarding how much they valued STEM and expressed curiosity is the ones right here, and love of new ideas were quite a bit higher. And to be honest, some of these findings don't really match what we had expected from the beginning, that we thought that people who thought STEM was important and that they were curious and lover of new information necessarily then would also reflect a higher STEM identity and STEM confidence. And you see that that's not quite the case of what the data indicated. Looking at the data across regions, a perceived importance of STEM to community and community STEM identity. We found that all regions viewed STEM as potentially important to the community, right here, but did not perceive their regions as having a strong identity. So they felt that their communities, that STEM was important, but they didn't think that how their communities were a part of STEM or how STEM was a part of their community was very high. Stronger explicit values associated with STEM is less in rural areas, but all groups perceive STEM resources as limited. So again, some of the questions that we asked in the survey questionnaire were, what are some of the resources in your area? And some of the findings indicated that there was a perception from the people who completed this survey that some of the resources are limited. Specifically relating to STEM. This slide presents data collected and analyzed during phase 2 of the research. And that's again where we received 366 completed questionnaire surveys on this. Questionnaire participants were asked to rate how important they thought specific STEM areas were to their community. And that was on a 7-point scale from not at all to extremely important. So they kind of ranked how they perceived that. Conducting a factor analysis of the data that we collected from that, we're able to group the findings into 5 overarching categories that you see to the right in here. And these include knowledge industry, outdoor industry, food and garden, recreation and tourism, and social services. To the left are some of the areas within that knowledge that kind of make up what the knowledge industry was. So in this case, it made up academic research, engineering, technology, and military within that area. Outdoor industry, was made up of mining, agriculture, and ranching. Food and garden was made up of food and gardening. Recreation and tourism was made up of hospitality, nature, wildlife, viticulture, and social services were made up of healthcare, public society, public safety. And then there were other responses, alternative energy, astronomy, and veterinary science that actually didn't fall within these. So the data made up of 5 specific different areas. So how do all of these findings so far play out by individual region of the RAIN project? This slide also presents findings from the phase 2 community questionnaire. And in this, the C represents where community importance scored higher than average, and P represents personal interest scored higher than average. You see some differences in what we call brands, or how the different the different regions kind of identify themselves as STEM identity that emerge from the data. So for example, you take a look at the Navapache region in Arizona, they ranked higher in community importance of food and gardening, as well as that it's important, as well as it represents personal interest of the people completing this. So the Navapache region identified their STEM identity more closely aligned by food and gardening within that area. For the Graham Greenlee, they identified themselves more as a community, found that knowledge and industry and outdoor industry were important to them, and that they're interested in that. So these two cluster here. So knowledge and industry, outdoor industry characterize Graham Greenlee region as far as STEM. Verde Valley, River Valley, or Verde Valley, they saw themselves more important that recreation and tourism was for their area, as well as the high scores as far as interest in that area. And we see the same thing for Cochise, region, that they saw the same thing here. So community importance is consistently rated higher than personal interest in all areas. So while you see these that are clustered together, we still saw community interest. People interest were interest in the community. They perceived the interest a little bit higher than their personal interest in these areas. Okay. This right here, and I'll leave this up for a minute so that you can kind of take a look at it. We also conducted interviews for phase 2 with RIC members from each of the 5 different, each of the 4 different regions as part of this RAIN project. And you will kind of see by their comments that the partnerships and broadening geographic reach seem to be key strategies for building a local place-based STEM identity. And again, I'll just take a few minutes for you to read these so that you get kind of a sense or a flavor of what they said about their own communities and moving forward in building that. Just a slide that shows our research team: Jill Stein, research director, myself, Dolly Hyde, Justin Reeves, and Rebecca Null, who is a past research associate, and Eric Jones, who's an affiliate researcher. This was part of the research team, the people who made up the research team. Here are our project partners. And this is how to reach us if you have any questions on the research. This is Dolly's email, my email address, and Jill Stein. So if you have any questions, comments, either about this presentation or other things having to do with RAIN research, don't hesitate to send one of us an email.
We are about to head into breakout sessions number 1. We're going to be focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, on broadening active engagement, like who is involved, advocacy, who are we advocating for, and building relationships, who supports students. So that's breakout session 1. So if you could please hover over your name, and if you have not already, update your Zoom name to include your session number at the front. So if you'd like to go to broaden engagement, you're going to put a number 1 at the very front of your Zoom name. If you're going to the advocacy training and workshop, you're going to add a 2. Please include your organization or ecosystem at the tail end of your name as well. We are recording this session, so we'll be able to share the chat features and include everybody's information on the share out so that it's great for networking. So again, we're about to head into our breakout sessions. I wanted to thank our planning team one more time and all of our presenters. Thank you so much to Gary and the RAIN team for sharing that information. It's really helpful and interesting and extremely useful to understand the work that you're doing. So thank you for that. Welcome back, everybody. I see some of you are coming back. We're about to go into part 2 and talking about stay rural, create opportunities to keep everybody in your area. So we're still talking about broadening active engagement, advocacy, and building relationships with local business. So we wanted to give another quick shout out to all of our presenting ecosystems. They've done a lot of work to not only bring us all together, but present today and in our 3-day series. So shout out to all of our ecosystems and our presenters. Welcome back. Hopefully part 2 of day 1 went well and your discussions were wonderful.
It went very well. We enjoyed our discussions.
Yay. So we definitely would like to have each group share out some highlights. I don't think they're all back yet, right, Hope?
We have about 10 seconds left.
Okay, so I'll wait just one more. To do some share outs before we end.
All right, everybody should be back now.
All right, awesome. So as we return to the main room for the closing thoughts of day one, I wanted to have somebody from each group or each breakout session, so broaden active engagement, advocacy, and building relationships, focused on student voice, share out how the day went. Jake, just so you know, we're going to make you co-host so we can go start our other Zoom. We have a STEM community lunchtime conversation coming up. But Jake, if anything happens, just know that it'll shift to you, okay?
Got it.
All right, so if we could have volunteers, I don't know if you selected anybody, I will stop sharing and we'll check the chat box, but we're looking for somebody to talk about how the discussion went in broaden active engagement. Anybody willing? See the chat box here.
I could do it if nobody else is willing, but
Perfect. Thank you, Joanne. Go for it.
You're welcome. Everyone who knows me well knows I like to talk, so we're good here. So the main focus of our session on broadening active engagement was all about asset mapping. We had 3 case studies. Myself in British Columbia, Canada, we did a province-wide asset map. Cal in Arizona talked about the case, their asset map that they did in Arizona. And then Mary Margaret Small talked about the asset map they did in New York. In the counties that she's responsible for. So it was 3 very different asset maps, 3 very different sizes. We talked about what we did, our methodology, and then we talked about the tools that we used. There were some good discussions around the data that we collected. So what we're doing going forward is we are going to be sharing the tools that we used with the group that attended the session. And the hope is that between now and November 5th, they're going to come up with a plan for an asset map in their community, and they get to determine what their community is. So is it their neighborhood? Is it their town? Is it their entire state? And then they get to determine which tools they want to use and the methodology for their asset map going forward. So we'll share the tools. Then on November 5th, everybody will share their plan and the tools that they plan to use. And then we're going to create working groups going forward, depending on the size of the asset map that folks are doing and the tools that they're using. And either myself, Cal, Mary Margaret, or Beth will be a support group for the groups going forward doing their asset map. So the hope is that by January 28th, the whole bunch of organizations will have completed an asset map of varying sizes, and we will share the information that was collected as part of those asset maps. I don't know if Cal or Beth or Mary Margaret want to add to that, but that was kind of the core of our session and the core of the discussions that we had. I think all 4 of us agree that doing an asset map is a seriously important part of your ecosystem. For us being such a large area, it was really important to make sure that we were able to access all those remote, rural, and Indigenous communities. 2/3 of the province, more than 2/3 of the province is very remote, rural, and we have 90 distinct Indigenous communities. Cal is very similar in that. And we needed to make sure we were reaching all of those communities. So we needed to find out who they are, where they are, and what their assets are, so that we could support them in appropriate ways. We learned some amazing, interesting things, but I won't go on or go into that because I could talk forever. But Cal, Beth, or Mary Margaret, did you have anything to add?
You did a great job, Joanne. Awesome. Thank you.
I would concur. That was an excellent summary. So thank you. Up next, we would like the advocacy group to share. And don't worry, I'm coming back. I'm just jumping off and jumping back in.
Hey, this is Winnie. I was asked to summarize. We had a fantastic group. First, we asked people to kind of talk about in a cloud, when they think of advocacy, what do they think of? And it was very fascinating to see the terms. And then We looked at more formal definitions of advocacy versus lobbying and the types of advocacy. And then the goal of our 3-day experience is for each ecosystem to kind of have a advocacy plan kind of related to their strategic initiatives. So what we did is basically kind of talk about issues and concerns and goals, and the 3 key ones that people came up with. And I wanted to share some of those. They were really fascinating comments, and we used a Padlet. Of course, equity and STEM access was probably one of the number 1. Real projects and real outcomes. Telling your story and really finding diverse STEM experiences and leaders. Connections with business and education, in particular, agriculture. A lot of really interesting information about agriculture. Attracting qualified STEM educators and helping counselors understand what's going on in the community in terms of jobs. The limitations of career explorations and the fact that in many cases, kiddos do not really have realistic views of what a career is really about. So, really elevating student voice, ensuring that all educators have some STEM PD and feel comfortable with it, not just the frontline teachers and after school staff. Think global, act local, which is what this experience is about. And issues with poverty, that it is not just diversity, but it is also issues with poverty. And poverty is an issue of diversity. So we're in the process of beginning to think about these issues and how what audiences we're going to try to talk to, how we're going to talk to them, what is the message going to be, how we're going to share it, and how this whole process can be integrated into what the ecosystem is doing. Hey group, what did I miss?
Great job. Great.
Excellent. Sounds like you got it all, Winnie. All right, perfect. And I will provide a quick overview of the building relationships with business, focusing on student voice. In the first session, we had presentations from Hugo Bryan Youth Leadership and 4-H and Chief Science Officers, including a STEM panel with 3 of our International Leadership Council members, CSO Chile, CSO Saiba, and CSO Haley. Haley is in Hood River, Oregon, in a rural community, and CSO Saiba is in Midland, Michigan. While Chile is here in Arizona, she has been able to travel and amplify her voice quite a bit. The second session was building relationships with business, focusing on the strategy that Jake from Michigan, our Director of Global Partnerships, focuses on when introducing STEM to organizations that might not necessarily consider themselves STEM. So we asked our group to just do a similar to asset mapping, the easy version of Google your area and identify 3 large companies that they would like to partner with, 2 small companies that might be interested in their area to support STEM, and then 1 challenge that they continue to face when engaging with businesses to support their engagement with youth. So we identified ways that you could start the conversations and build confidence with businesses that they are STEM and they do add value and can collaborate with a variety of youth programs that can not only advocate for leadership skill development, but also preparing for the future workforce. So I'll ask my group, did I miss anything? All right, got a couple of thumbs up, makes feel good. Honestly, this was designed as a convening, like Jeremy, Dr. Babinger discussed bringing rural communities together and highlighting the work that the RAIN grant has been working on for some time now. And also the collaborative group of the STEM ecosystems community. So I wanted to, again, thank everybody for the work that they put in on the front end. We had some planning team meetings and conversations around this idea. It was a whole group effort of about 12 people on the planning committee, from the basic idea to actually hosting this event virtually. While we absolutely would love to be in person, the idea that we were able to come together, we'll be able to share this video and the Google folder with all of the presentations and information that was shared today to lead into part 2 is really exciting to me as one of the planning team members. It is a 3-part. So the next date is November 5th, which is next week. And your breakout sessions ask you to do something. Might be small or resource gathering, but if you could take some time over the next week to finish your to-do item and bring it back with you on November 5th. We also, again, wanted to highlight those STEM ecosystems that collaborated to put this on today. Again, thank you to our presenting sponsors, TIES, RAIN, and SciTech Institute. So with that, I wanted to leave you with one more superhero tidbit. So much stronger than you think you are. Trust me, said Spider-Man. There's nothing, any other comments from the good of the group? Thank you, planning team. And if not, we'll see you next week.